Ladies and gentlemen, I know that there's a lot of big-time information that was just released as Fab 2.0. All the details were released very recently, actually, last night. Now, the episode that you're about to see was recorded on Monday, well before we even knew that there was going to be an announcement coming. So keep in mind that even though the discussion might not talk about the details of Fab 2.0, there's a lot of great tidbits in this conversation that you guys should listen. And later on, I believe tomorrow, you will also get a more in-depth, in-response video with a prominent figure in the community so we can really discuss and dig into everything Fab 2.0. In the meantime, however, enjoy this episode with MajiinBae.
Well, I work hard. How come everybody wants to shuffle my cards? And I think that it's true.
This is the Instant Speed Podcast, brought to you by FabDB.net, your premier source for deck building tools, collection management, and simulated booster drafting. Upgrade your account at FabDB.net. Get access to all the features to bring your game to the next level. Yes, this is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode 27. Our guest today is Caleb Van Patten, who you might know him as MajiinBae. Yes, he doesn't even know his name sometimes, and we'll get to that very shortly. But before that, friends, we've got the facts. Yes, the facts are coming through, and one of the more important ones is that there is a new hero revealed. That would be Taylor. Yes, Taylor, nice little play on words there, is going to be a promotional hero given away to cosplayers that will be attending Pro Tour in New Jersey. I don't know much about the details in terms of what would qualify you as a cosplayer. Obviously, that seems like a ridiculous statement. If you cosplay, you're a cosplayer. It's just that simple. If there's any application process or whatnot, I am not too sure. But the best thing is if you are a cosplayer or you want to dip your toe into that world, there is a reward for you waiting at Pro Tour New Jersey. A very cool and exclusive hero. Also, there has been an announcement regarding the availability of Unlimited Everfest. Yes, an unlimited printing of Everfest was announced, and I believe it'll be released in September, if I'm not mistaken. Again, this was appearing on fabtcg.com if you're interested in taking a look at that and finding out when Unlimited is going to be released. Seems like that would be in September. All right, 983 Media, the wonderful media house there who produces this show amongst so many others, is opening up a merch store. Yeah, baby, we got merch. So if you want to show off the Instant Speed Podcast, if you want to maybe go ahead and tell people that there is no Discord, how about telling them that, hey, you're not losing if you're learning. Whole bunch of cool stuff is available at 983shop.com. Use the code ISP983 and get $5 off your first order. Ooh, yeah, baby. 983 Shop has all the sweetest merch. I also want to talk about a little bit of a giveaway that we're doing here on the show. When 983 Media's YouTube channel attains 1,000 subscribers, and I think we're approaching it. I think we're not too far away. But when we hit 1,000 subscribers, we will be doing a pretty hefty giveaway. I've got a whole bunch of BCW supplies, which I will be showing off between the Go Again segment and our guest segment. So keep an eye out to find out what you can win. And if you haven't already, go to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it does get us a little bit closer to that main giveaway. And I do want to also send a lot of love to our Tier 3 patrons. Yes, our Patreon members are awesome, and they have gone ahead and tossed our way, a lot of support, and in the mail for them is some BCW supplies. But big thanks to Ryan K, Kirk B, Tom R, Alaric C, and Roger. Thank you guys for supporting the show. We're about ready to rock and roll. We've got MajiinBae on the show, and he joins us here on the Instant Speed Podcast.
There's only one weekend left in skirmish season, and I don't want to see you guys miss out, so I'm going to give you the list you should run. But to get it, you're going to need to go to the best website in Flesh and Blood, the only website in Flesh and Blood, that's right, fabdb.net. And you're going to be able to take a look at my 8-time skirmish winning Viserai list. You can get the list, the ratios, the sideboard guide, and everything you need to take down the tournament. And then once you've done that, make sure you upgrade your account to Premium. Premium is going to give you access to all the added tools to make sure your deck building process is as clean as possible. That's right, fabdb.net, your premier source for collection management and deck building tools.
The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes possibly the most likable guy in card gaming. He is a mainstay on the Legends of Runeterra scene, establishing himself as an entertaining streamer and a competitive threat. He is also a Runeterra seasonal champion. He has a world top 16 finish to his name and is tied for the most seasonal top cuts. His most recent reach into Flesh and Blood has resulted in an invitation to the Pro Tour. Welcome to ISB, Caleb Van Patten, a.k.a. MajiinBae. What's up, buddy?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Weird to hear anybody introduce me as Caleb, honestly. That's the first time it's happened, I think.
I can honestly say that despite the fact that we've hung out several times together over many days, even sleeping mere feet from each other in a hotel room, I did not know your name at all. You just were Majin. And
Majin, yeah.
Somebody referred to you as Caleb one day, and I said, I guess you're Caleb. Like, that could be...
I guess so, yeah. If you have to call him that, I suppose. Yeah, it's weird. It's gotten to the point where my own brother thinks it's weird if people see me in public and call me Caleb. He's like, it's weird if people say Caleb now.
Being referred to as Matt is odd to a certain degree, given the fact that my entire professional career, I'm known as Flake. I've been Flake for 20 some odd years. It's just the way it goes. And now when someone's like, oh, this is Matt, even seeing my name on a broadcast where underneath my picture or whatever, it'll say Matt DeMarco. And I'm like, who the is that guy? Like, you know, it's just so fascinating. But yeah, welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
It's always great to have fantastic people. You were always on the docket. Let's just be real. You're not just here as a plug. You were always somebody that I want to have on the show. Unfortunately, Eric Longfist, aka DOA, was not available. He's not feeling well. We wish him well. He will be on our future episode. But we do get the majesty that is MajiinBae. The majesty. So the origin story, my man.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it and how you went from card gamer extraordinaire, your first few steps into CCG, the CCG space, to where you are now, which is a Pro Tour player. Like, what the hell? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I started, as many of us did, in Magic the Gathering. I remember it was like right after I graduated high school, 2014 or something. One of my buddies came by with a couple Magic the Gathering decks he wanted to show me. Shout out Brady. He wanted to show me this cool game. And so I played it and I was like, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. I've always really liked strategy games. And then there was a specific moment where I remember this vividly. He used a negative intended effect on his own unit to achieve a positive result, right? Something along the lines of killing or debuffing his own unit to gain an advantage. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever because the card was clearly intended to do something to your opponent's unit. And I was like, oh my God. And, just possibilities exploded in my brain. I was like, that's so cool that you can do these things that maybe weren't intended. And so from then I was just hooked. I played Magic for years after that. And I immediately wanted to compete. Immediately, that day. I'd never really played card games. I played that one game, and the second he left, I was Googling when the next tournament near me was. and I just showed up. I had no cards, no nothing. I didn't even know the rules. And I just showed up to a draft tournament, and I was like, hey guys, I'm here to play Magic the Gathering. And they're like, yeah, right over there. And then, they're like, does anyone not know how to draft? And I was like, me. And they go, okay, well, you do this and then you take the token cards out. And I was like, I don't know what a token card is. I had to ask everything, but I had so much fun and I loved it. Eventually I did move away from Magic after playing on the Pro Tour and in the Mythic Invitational. I was good, right? But no one you'd ever heard of. I was not a person in the community. I was just some guy who was pretty good at Magic. If you played locally, you knew who I was, but that was about it. And then I moved away to Legends of Runeterra, the League of Legends card game. And I did pretty okay for a second, kind of climbed up the ladder. And then they introduced their seasonal tournaments, which is kind of their big tournaments. There's seasonals and then there's worlds. That's the tournaments that Runeterra has outside of community ones. And I top 32'd it. I made the first top cut. It's a 1,000-person tournament and I top 32'd the first one. And I had friends who'd been pushing me to stream for years. They're just like, oh, you're pretty good at card games. You should stream it. And I always went, nah, because I didn't never watch streams, so I didn't know what streamers did. I thought it would be really, really hard, and it kind of is, right? But but I tried it. I turned on my camera, made all my friends watch, And yeah, I just streamed Runeterra, and I was like, man, it'd be so cool if like, I don't know, after a week I'd have like 2 people watching. And then like after a week I had like 30 people watching on average. And then after like a month I had like 100 people. And it just like continued to grow like way beyond what I expected. And now it's what I do for a living, you know this.
Mhm.
I stream and play Runeterra. And Runeterra is great. I love Legends of Runeterra. It's such a good game. However, I love playing paper card games. There's something about it, you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
Like just sitting down across from someone, the feel of the cards in your hand, like there's really just something about it. And I stumbled onto Flesh and Blood because one, Austin Yost with the most, mutual friend of ours, and their competitive announcement, their OP announcement, where they talked about how they were going to make a pro tour and everything. And I read their entire article about their new pro tour system or whatever. Like, you know, you're going to start at the armories, and then there's the skirmishes, and then there's
the
Road
tier
to National.
system. Yeah.
Yeah, I read that entire article, finished it, went, yeah, I'm going to play in that. And I didn't even know what game it was for yet. I just read it and I was like, yeah, I'm down. So I hit up Austin Yost and he's like, oh yeah, it's Flesh and Blood. It's pretty cool. Here you go. Check out these things on YouTube. So I watched some stuff on YouTube and I was like, yeah, awesome. And I went to like a local draft for Aria, because that's when I started, was like when Aria released. I went to a local draft. And then I played in like, I like bought some Blitz cards and went to an event, played Blitz, lost. Duh. And then just showed up to like a calling, which was Dallas, the limited one.
That's just like out of the box. It's just, see, this is what I really like about you, is that there's this immense enthusiasm of, and it's almost a level of fearlessness for you as well, where you show up. I'm completely on the opposite end. Like, I'm not necessarily intimidated by new card games, but I know that if I want to put my toe into the actual gameplay, into the actual events, I need a lot of backstory. I need a lot of preparation for it, and I consume a lot of content. I practice a lot, so that when I'm there, I'm not necessarily the one asking the questions of what the hell a token is. Now, that's there's no shame in that at all. It's just funny that you should mention it, where you show up, you had no idea what it is, and the first warning sign, or not necessarily a warning sign, but like that first scent that one of the sharks might pick up is when you're like, when you refer to it as Magic the Gathering. I am here for Magic the Gathering.
I'm here for Magic the Gathering. Yeah. They're like,
Yeah. Who is this guy? Who has drafted? You're like, not me. What's a token? And they're just like licking their chops because there's this fresh blood on the table for them to go ahead and pick at. But you've essentially really carved a nice path for yourself here, being on the Pro Tour, having won a Pro Quest fairly early on in your career. I've heard it from a lot of people who come from Magic and then go to the digital landscape and then, you know, dip their toe back into paper format, be it with Flesh and Blood or whatever. And oftentimes their path to success is not as, you know, it's not as direct as yours has been. You know, I have to first talk about your expansion into Flesh and Blood. And, you know, you mentioned that really the first thing that gripped you was the fact that there was an organized play element to it. But you were already very gripped by Runeterra's organized play and that tournament scene. You've had success in that. So was it just this desire to continue to be successful at other things? Was it just the fact that you just like the competitive element to any card game, frankly? You know, the fact that the Flesh and Blood one was well tiered, it was well structured. Is that what gripped you? You know, like what pulled you away from focusing completely on the competitive element of Runeterra and starting to get into something like Flesh and Blood's competitive scene?
Well, Runeterra is built not with competitive in mind. It has competitive, but like it wasn't built to make a pro scene, you know? And Flesh and Blood was. And there's a couple other games like this where like Magic the Gathering wasn't really built to have a pro scene. It ended up having one and then didn't and then did and then didn't, but that we don't need to get into that. But like, so Flesh and Blood is built to be more competitive from the ground up. At least that's what it feels like for me, right? There's a lot less variance. There's a big focus on like player skill and knowledge. And that got my attention. The organized play announcement, I'm not going to say like got me into Flesh and Blood. What it did was get my attention. It got my attention enough to try it. And so I like came for the organized play, stayed for the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like once I tried Flesh and Blood, I was like, oh my goodness. I like this.
your streaming career as well, which you said was, reluctantly something that you may not have initially been into. I started streaming in the same vein as what you did, where somebody said, you should try it. And I said, maybe,
Yeah.
possibly. And then you go from there. Now, here we both are. Obviously, you have immense success as a streamer. We both have our partner stripes, but I mean, it's these two different sort of worlds of success in it. And you found immense success, and justifiably so. I mean, you're just an awesome dude and a high-level competitor. But like any content creator with a following, there's always this quote-unquote sort of one-game stigma. And there's this belief by some of the community or some of the people out there, followers or whatnot, that a content creator must be married to one game and they must essentially just live and die by that game. You, for one, went from Magic and the Mythic Championship MTGA to Runeterra, and now you're playing Flesh and Blood, and you're unapologetic about just enjoying card games in general, which in reality is how I feel everyone should be. But how do you approach it, or have you come across some of this? I know that when I used to stream Gwent mainly. Like that was, 6 days a week I'd be streaming Gwent, but on the 7th day I would be playing something like Mythgard or Cards or Magic or Runeterra or something else. And there was always somebody who said like, this isn't Gwent, and like, what are you doing playing this? Go back to whatever, like, do you ever encounter that kind of mentality?
Oh yeah. It's funny because I see it a lot in card games, and fighting games are kind of the same, where it's like, this isn't the normal game you play, and then I normally say, shut up. I'll play whatever I want. You don't have to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people understand, like, I do a lot of YouTube content too. And my YouTube content is strictly Runeterra. So my YouTube content is, I now see myself more of a YouTuber than a streamer. Even though, like, I think I put more effort into like my streaming and stuff, and I enjoy streaming more. But like, YouTube's where I make my money. It's I do Runeterra content, and then streaming is more to like interact with the people who like my content or me, right? Like, I get to jump on Twitch and I get to like just talk to chat all the time and play whatever game I want, and that's really fun for me.
Yeah,
Runeterra. I love playing Runeterra.
Yeah,
but yeah.
No, I just wanted to sort of hammer that point home, is that for people who are streamers, a lot of the appeal of streaming isn't necessarily playing the game. It's interacting with the community and dealing
100%.
with some schmucks who are out there just to sort of... My response to people who tell me what to play is I tell them, I'm like, you can hire me for $50 an hour and I will play whatever you want me to play. And I said, if I get a donation for $50, I will switch games to whatever you want. Yeah. And other than that, you can suck a high hard one and we can move on and I can just live my life. And that's kind of, for those out there who are unaware, it's a regular thing where there's this impression that a streamer is some sort of, co-owned entity by whoever their followers are. They can direct their path, but in reality, just do whatever the hell you want. So I'm glad that you just held it, like, literally in the most MajiinBae way ever. It's a big smile. Shut up. Go away. Big laugh. It's like my favorite thing. Now, the expansion, rather, or into Flesh and Blood and getting into a competitive mindset, you said that that's essentially what gripped you. You came for the competitive scene, stayed for the game, but getting into the competitive scene, obviously, if that's the first attraction point for you, you want to be playing at a high level. You want to also be successful on that competitive track. What were some of the resources you tapped into in order to not only come out of the gate, you hit the ground running, so to speak, but also to improve your game to the point where you did win a pro quest and you were very, very, adept out there in the field of a very, very high level community of really good players?
Well, I started watching because obviously the first thing I reached to is like content, right? We're content creators. So like the first thing I think of is like, okay, I'm going to find someone who knows what they're talking about. I'm going to listen to everything they say. And the big one that I stumbled on was, I think, the first one that a lot of people see, and that's like Arsenal Pass.
Yeah.
They do a great job. I still read all their stuff. I subscribe to their Patreon. And like, I don't keep up with it as much anymore because I don't have like a ton of time for Flesh and Blood. But it was huge for me in the beginning because there's like these there's these what are they called? Not heuristic, I don't remember. But like when something is usually correct enough that you can just like say this thing, like if you're playing a Redline Briar, you would say just don't block, and it's correct enough to where it's almost always correct, right?
Yeah, it's
Um,
a rule of thumb to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's those things about games where like you don't initially know. Like I couldn't play Flesh and Blood, right? I didn't have like a store I could go to. Now there's more tournaments being run. But I was super busy with streaming and Runeterra, so I couldn't like go to a store and play games and get the feel for it. So I had to, because I knew I was going to go play in the calling, and I've played 6 games of Flesh and Blood total, right? And so like I basically would like listen to what they'd say, and they would throw out little offhand comments about things. You'd be like, oh well, obviously you don't want to block with your equipment until later in the game. And I'd go, oh, don't block with the equipment until later in the
write
game.
it down into the notes. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like once you know these things, they're second nature. But like if you weren't able to really play the game, you have no way of knowing this. You don't really know what's important. Do you need to protect your life total early, or do you use it more as a resource like other card games? And so yeah, I used a lot of that. And honestly, less of like the specifics of what they said and more of the throwaway sentences that they thought, oh yeah, well of course, obviously XYZ. I didn't care about their dash deck guide, but what I cared about was they talked about how against this deck you need to obviously play defensively, right? And that would be something that they just expected everyone to know, but I didn't know that. And so those things were very helpful for me. Help me kind of paint like the broad strokes of how the game is supposed to progress. And then going into the calling, I was able to really like put that into practice, even if I wasn't familiar with the cards. And I think in like day 1 of the calling, I finished like 2nd seed.
Oh, like,
yeah.
You're some sort of weird prodigy to a degree.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, that's
luck. Let's say luck. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we could say someone like Brody Spurlock, who just won the Battle Hardened. Like he's a young kid, he's got so much ahead of him. I think he's like 16 or 17, and he's just got like that's I wouldn't say a prodigy because he's just a good card player, but he's got sort of prodigy vibes to him. But you, for yourself, and I do need to give immense amounts of what do I say? Is it DAP? I don't know what the kids use these days, but a lot of respect to Arsenal Pass because they are one of the best resources out there for improving your game. It's the fact of the matter. And like you mentioned, just these small little tidbits, like you said, these rules of thumb, it's kind of like they give you the color palette in terms of how to paint the picture. And if you color outside the lines, it as long as from a high viewpoint, you get the image that you're trying to get there. Like you said, just don't block, use your equipment here. For me, that was Matthew Folks, who essentially, when we would be practicing, he would say, like, I would throw out a block. He's like, the hell are you doing? What are you doing? That's
the accent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, what if I told you that you just don't block? Yeah, exactly. Like that's
cast belittle.
Yeah, exactly. It just, and you're just like, just eat it. You got a lot of life. It's all good. It's like, don't be an idiot. Just eat it. I'm like, okay, I'm good. But you're right. And it's great because like Arsenal Pass and Instant Speed, we've got a good relationship. We exist in sort of different spaces of what our content is, and I do not have the capacity to be, to offer the kind of competitive edge that they can give you in the discussion that Brendan Patrick and Hayden Dale offer. They're two titans of this industry, and I adore them both to death, and I respect them both immensely. You can follow both podcasts. We're both great people, so. It's just great to hear that that there's resources out there, and for yourself, you do have a card game background, but there's still so much room to improve, and a lot of those mentalities and those lines of play that you've already got bored into your mind from other card games, they are transferable to Flesh and Blood, and we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But before we get to that, I got to ask why you landed on Viserai as your first sort of order of business. And now I'm kind of getting the picture because the more you explain, you're like, no, competitive scene is where I want to go. And we knew that Viserai was going to be good, but it's also a fairly higher skill cap sort of skill ceiling hero. So you really dove in and, your first order of business was, I'm going to play one of the harder heroes to master. And there you are winning ProQuest with it. What made you land on Viserai specifically?
It's a bit of a funny story. Real quick before we move on from the last topic, I want to shout out friends that I've been testing with in the Discord because they also have helped us.
There is no Discord, but go ahead. Yes,
there is no Discord, but if there was, the people in it would be very helpful.
Do you have names? By all means, like shout out some names if you got them.
Dalen Mack, practiced a lot with him. Very strong player. Taught me a lot of the ins and outs of Prism because like basically I played Viserai and my opponent played Prism, so I just went like, "Oops, I beat you," and like just didn't care what they were doing. But if I wanted to switch decks, so like I played Starvo in a different event, and I needed the reps against Prism with like a really competent Prism player because I was no longer facing a very good matchup. Now I was facing a very intricate matchup. And so, yeah, he helped me immensely. Austin Yost is always there to help. Even now, still helping me out. All you guys are incredibly helpful. But Viserai. So fun fact, I started with Kano in Blitz. I looked at all the heroes in Flesh and Blood, and I said I don't like any of these except Kano because I like to play at instant speed. I like to play on my opponent's turn, and I like combo. I'm a well-known combo player. Like in Magic, I played like Affinity, which is like combo, Storm and Krark Clan Ironworks, and then I'm most well-known in Runeterra for playing Zoe Lee Sin, which is like a control combo deck. And so I looked through all the heroes and I was like, this one's for me. And so I asked people, I was like, how do I play Kano in Classic Constructed? And they're like, haha, you don't. that's the funny thing. Yeah. So I played him in Blitz and I was like, cool, this rocks. Tried to play him in Classic Constructed, got dunked on. And I was like, all right, this isn't for me. And so I looked and I was like, what combo decks exist in this game? And there's like 2, right? You have like OTK Viserai, which was not good. And then you had Bolt and Sabers, which was also kind of like tier 2, I guess, and not really my style of combo deck. But they had like a dev showcase or something, and one of them brought a full-on OTK Viserai, where like there was no tempo game plan. It was just OTK Viserai with like Rouse the Ancients and Exude Confidence and stuff. And so I actually built that. I built Viserai way before it was good. This was during like the Briar meta. And it was not great, but I really liked the play style, and I just stuck with Viserai because I got really good at the math. You know what I mean? Because Viserai is like a good bit of math. You just when people ask for advice on Viserai, they're like, "How do I find the best line?" I'm like, "Okay, you count all the numbers up, and you just try to make the highest number, and that's how you play Viserai." And like that appealed to me. So when Viserai became this like meta dominant menace that he kind of is, I just slipped right into it. I like it a lot, and to toot my own horn, I'm very good at anything where I have the information. I struggle switching to games where it's mostly like hidden information, at least at first. But if you give me all of the information on the board, I can usually find the best line. And Flesh and Blood is very much on the board, where something like Legends of Runeterra isn't. And so even if I don't know what these cards do, I can sit here and I can read them and I can walk through the lines and then figure out the best one. And
Right.
Viserai does a lot of that, especially with like Rattlebones and Skeleta. It's a lot of like, okay, if I do this, this, and this, and this, I get this many numbers. And if I do this, 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 and this, I get this many numbers. That's 2 more numbers. Let's go with that line. Right. And that just appealed to me a lot.
So let's just back this up a little bit in terms of hidden information versus available information, because some people might be a little bit, I don't want to say confused about it, but they maybe need a little bit more elaboration with it. Because you're mentioning, something like Runeterra that has a lot of hidden information. A lot of the attacks would essentially, if you're a Flesh and Blood fan, never played Runeterra, all of the quote-unquote attacks that your opponent are going to toss at you are in the form of creatures that are on the board that attack. A lot of the hidden information is in the form of combat tricks or spells or stuff that you would essentially play, quote-unquote attack reactions that would enhance or inhibit your opponent, or enhance your creatures or inhibit your opponent's creatures or whatnot. In Flesh and Blood, you're mentioning that a lot of the information is essentially on the board. You mean that the attacks themselves, there's what you need to account for is right in front of you. Other than, let's say, obviously attack reactions and stuff. But for the most part, you're able to digest the board as it stands and figure things out, because there's a very low chance that you're going to be, they're going to pull a rabbit out of their hat or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I get to sit there and go, you're attacking for this mini, and you have these equipments, and your hero does this, and your weapon does this. And then I can kind of piece together what my best line is. I don't know how many other people do this. I imagine a lot, but it's worked really well for me. So for people looking to level up their game, maybe try this out. because it helped me a ton, is what I do on my opponent's turn is I sit there and I look at my 4 to 5 card hand with my arsenal or not, and I determine what my optimal line is if I don't have to block with anything, right? And I think we're going to talk about this a bit later, but like digital versus paper and how I approach it. But basically, I would sit there and determine my optimal line with 4 to 5 cards, and then I would go, okay, if I have to block with 1 card, now it's my optimal line. What's my optimal line if I have to block with 2 cards? What's my optimal line if I have to block with these 2 cards? Right? Like, and I would do that over and over and over and over and over again. And so I got pretty quick at it, and that's what I would do every single turn. Is like my opponent would attack, and I don't, like I said, I don't know. I talked to you guys about this a bunch, but I didn't know what most of the cards did in the game when I played like the Calling or even like the Pro Quest. I didn't know what any of the non-super meta heroes did. In my semifinals against Dash, I had to read every single card my opponent played, including Dash. Like, I had no idea what was going on.
What the hell's an item? Yeah.
What exactly. And but since it's all on board, I got to sit there and go, okay, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and it lets you do that again. Okay, got it. That's this much damage. I need to block with these cards, right? And so what I like to do, like I was saying, is I determine the optimal line, and then if they attack for 5 and I have to block for 3, they attack for 5, and I go, okay, if I keep every single card, I do 16 damage, right? But if I block for 3, I can still do 14 damage. And then it's clear that the best line is to block for 3, because it's one, you get one more damage swing in your favor, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I hear you. Exactly. I mean, just the overall value of blocking for 3. I mean, if your block for 3 results in you dealing 2 less damage than 4 less damage, then that's the optimal play. You know, if you're blocking for 3, but it's robbing you of an additional 4 damage potentially, then it's not optimal. It's a very you know, overhead view, very macroscopic view of what, like, people who are just tuning into this and just like, if this is their first introduction to the game, it might seem very, you know, mechanical, very mathematical, and very bland, but we promise you, it's just
it's not like that at all.
No, from the perspective of someone like yourself who's got a very analytical mind in terms of how to approach a new game, and just like you mentioned, listening to Arsenal Pass and a lot of the advice that is given to you by them or by people from the Discord that we play test with, etc. Just that basic element of advice is just sort of the groundwork, but it does have applications, like you mentioned, when you're just trying to figure things out. That was some of the first advice I ever got when it comes down to stuff, when I was just asking, when is it best to block or whatever. It's like, well, a good rule of thumb is literally calculate how much damage you could, on the high end, receive. Can you out damage that? If so, then take it, fight back, and get the momentum back. Because if you're clapping back for more than you're taking, then it's a better exchange. I mean, it's obviously a lot more,
it's way more nuanced, but that's like, it's a great place to start. And then you influence your decision with other things, right? Am I ahead? Am I the beatdown? All that kind of stuff.
There's this sort of decision tree that, you know, again, we can go into really the nitty gritty of just the basic schools of thought when it comes to card gaming. But in general, landing on Viserai, to me, I was like, let's just do Ninja. Ninja seems like a good way to start, and then learning about Vis. But like you said, you took Vis like before Vis was Vis, right? Like when he was just kind of this fringe hero that was not really getting too much respect, and suddenly, kablamo, you won a Pro Quest with Vis. Moving forward on bans, and I know that this is kind of old news now to a degree, because a lot of the shock and awe of the ban announcement has kind of fizzled out, but there's still some discussion to be had. The previous episode of Instant Speed was really amidst that first blast of that announcement, and now the smoke is cleared, the dust has settled, and there's nothing that was banned except for this looming May 2nd announcement that there is another one coming, and it's going to likely be a pretty big deal. I want to get your first perspective on the bans. And you mentioned that, you know, you've played in some pretty big events. You're going to be at the Pro Tour. What is your anticipation for what those future bans are going to be like? And what is your reaction to the fact that it's going to be status quo until May 2nd?
I, as a player, don't like it because I want to know what to test, right? And I think like the no bans, if they want to go with no bans, it's fine. But the problem is, like, this is a paper card game, So I have to get the cards, right? Or like find out who to borrow them from. And if I only have a limited amount of time, I might not have the time to get the cards that I need, depending on what happens. Um, and it is my personal opinion that LSS really wants Starvo banned. They just don't want to ban him.
Yeah.
They want him gone. Like, I feel like that's very clear with the tone of their message and their actions sense is they want him gone, but they don't want to pull the ban hammer. They don't want to pull that trigger again. Not yet, is what it feels like to me.
There's this sort of vibe that I get from it where there was probably a bunch of situations or scenarios that they were discussing, and they're like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is it's super powered, it gets Living Legend ahead of Pro Tour, and that's the way it goes, and that we don't have to deal with it. The other end of the spectrum is it's good, but it's not good enough. It gets like halfway there through Pro Tour. People might be tired of seeing it, but it's not good enough that it's not unbeatable. I think it honestly got to that Goldilocks zone of just not just right, the anti-Goldilocks zone, which is that just perfectly bad to the point where it got so close to Living Legend, but didn't quite cross the finish line to the point where LSS is like, okay, Jedi Mind Trick, now these are all Battle Hardens and they're all CCs, and like, we need to get this through. But there is that feeling that they just kind of had this approach of, like you mentioned, they wanted it gone. They just didn't want to be the executioner on it. They kind of wanted the mob to be the one to essentially string it up, right? Like they're so this scenario as it exists in my eyes is literally the worst case scenario where it's so damn good, but it didn't quite cross the finish line. It got right to the edge, but it needs an extra nudge to be pushed off the cliff. Now May 2nd's rolling around, and like you mentioned, the trouble is without knowledge of what's to come, and not just that like Starvo being Living Legend and not being a factor is part of it, but there's also another ban announcement coming, so they need to anticipate where Starvo's going to be. Is it going to be a player? Is it going to be legal? And how do we rebalance within that landscape? Because what happens if Starvo doesn't get banned, right? What if Starvo's still around? So they have so many different paths to consider. What's the outlook that you foresee come May 2nd?
I think they'll ban him. If he doesn't get LL, they'll speed him along his way. I think they don't want a Pro Tour of 70% Starvo. And it's rough out there if you're playing a non-Starvo deck. Like, we've done testing and stuff, and it's just so incredibly good. What I am interested in and worried about, because I'm a Viserai player, and the first thing you think about is, okay, Starvo's banned, now what? Viserai's insane. Not like a little good, like insane. Do you have to touch something for Viserai as well? So like, what happens if I practice this pretend format where Starvo gets banned and decide this is the deck, right? This is the build. And then they ban something out of Viserai. And I have 10 days to figure out what I want to play, how to get these cards, and then get there. That's what I'm worried about. That would scare me.
Well, that's the trouble that everyone has to land on, is the fact that it's not just Starvo. It's that Starvo is putting up a fight against Viserai, and Viserai, when not faced against Starvo, is very strong. So what happens if you do take that out of the equation? Like, if they do just get rid of it, you have to assume that they're going to be clipping something out of Viserai's arsenal, and a lot of people are suggesting that it's going to be Skeletor, and like, that's not going to be on the table. And like, this is the big conundrum right now, is that it is a mystery, and it's so pushed up against the Pro Tour. There's like 2 weeks to prepare for it, and if the major like, what if they do ban Skeletor? Are you just going in with a Viserai deck and like are you slamming a Tunic on it? Like, what the hell are you even doing?
You lose a lot of points if they ban Skeletor. Like, not only does it, I hate the idea of the Skeletor ban, not for competitive play. I mean, yeah, for competitive play, I'm a Viserai player, but like, I hate it because you just remove what makes Viserai. Like, you have to play Tunic now, which sucks. I don't know, just take the fun out of the hero. What do we call them? Heroes?
Heroes. I think they're heroes. Champions, heroes, yeah, leaders.
Whatever. I don't know. I probably would not play Viserai without Skelita. That card's so insane. Like I often say that you have to think twice in a Viserai game, and it's like once if you OTK and on your Rattlebones turns, and like that's it. Like your Rattlebones Skelita turns are the turns you actually have to think, and it's because the ceiling on the damage you can do is insane. It's like disgusting. It's not uncommon to do 30 plus damage on your Rattlebone Skelita turns, right? And if they remove that, Viserai loses a lot of the power, a lot of the comeback power that the deck has. It's very strong on the front foot, but it can also come back on the back foot because it has these incredibly swingy turns. And if you lose that, I think the deck loses a lot of its punching power.
Well, it would have to essentially, it's sort of abandon part of that OTK plan that it would
All
have.
of it.
Yeah, it's no longer going to be able to explode the way it does. And even if Starvo's out of the picture, how do you beat something like even an Oldhim?
You don't.
Well, that's where it comes down to, right? So people have to kind of come down. Like May 2nd, in my opinion, frankly, might be one of the most important days in Fab's competitive history because of how pressed up against the deadline it's going to be, how much time people are going to have to actually breathe when it comes to just trying to absorb what the new meta might look like, because everyone has their ideas. If it was literally just this gigantic, well-known fact that, okay, it's going to be Starvo ban and it's going to be this card clipped and that's about it, everybody can prepare for it. But the amount of, quote-unquote, common acceptance of one line of thought is not true. There's not just one road or one sort of angle that everybody is just agreeing on. Everyone has their outlandish ideas of what's going to get changed, what's going to get... I wrote an article for Channels Fireball where I was just spitballing random ideas just to see which ones actually had legs. And the more that I was thinking about them, the more that they made sense. And the more I was thinking about them, also, I was just coming up with other ideas like unban Red Plunder Run, ban Skeleta, do this, do that, do this, do that. I had once said a long time ago that Red Plunder Run was going to come back as a mythic. It might have a different title. It might be a +4 instead of a +3. Just to give it a different feel, but I felt like the card was too good and too important to just ban outright. But there's so many different angles to take, man, that if you were to give one fat guess for all the changes that's going to happen on May 2nd, obviously we're not going to hold you accountable if you're wrong, but what do you think May 2nd's complete ban and errata list is going to look like?
I think they're going to early Living Legends Starvo, and I think they're not going to touch anything else and hope that something's not too busted in the vacuum.
Oh, that is a dangerous game, though, man.
I think, but because they only needed to hold together for a week and a half, right? Just a week and a half. They're like, please, nobody figure it out. People will. I have the utmost faith in the community that like something, if that happens, something like the best deck will emerge at the Pro Tour if Starvo is banned or Living Legend. I think it will be Viserai. But yeah, I think that's what we're going to see. Do I think it's the best option? No. I don't know what the best option is. I'm not learned enough here to really weigh in on it, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, if
he's not already Living Legend, right?
It's going to be fascinating as well, because with that 2-week period, it's not like you have another event in between to sort of gauge the meta. Everyone's going to be within their own little cabals of big brain sort of testing groups, and everyone's going to show up with their own ideas. This is where sort of CCG espionage could really come in handy if anybody's out there on a spy network that wants to sort of figure out what else is going on. But I know there's a lot of really tight-knit testing groups and communities that are very good at just keeping secrets and making sure that they know, because there's a lot of discussion even after the calling in Indianapolis where Michael Hamilton's list, talking with some of the best players that we speak to, people like Brian Pasoko and people, like Matt Folks and all these, they're a lot of these people are just like, we didn't have this on our radar, this sort of build. And there it was winning events. So the first Pro Tour is certainly going to be one hell of it's going to be impactful in one way or another. So that's going to be good to watch. So there's definitely some stuff, some good reasons to tune in other than the fact that you might see Starvo banned. We'll see.
I hope Starvo gets banned. I would rather have an exciting Pro Tour where something emerges that's too broken that someone like cooked up, than have 50-60% of the field bring Starvo and it be a snooze fest.
Oh.
You know, like one of those is an exciting spectator event. One of those isn't.
Somebody figure out Reinar. I mean, there's people who there are a lot of Reinar
Reinar believers
that really put in a lot of work constantly. And like when Everfest came out, they're like, more tools for Reinar, and then kind of fell flat. Even though
to be fair, Swing Bay is busted. That card's so stupid.
It's great. Don't get me wrong, but ultimately, it just hasn't really crossed the finish line much. But someone will figure something out, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for, right? And I think that's what everyone's hoping for.
Someone said something along the lines of Reinar players are like the Grixis players of Magic, which is always like a group of people that are like it's a certain color combination in Magic that like people are always trying to make work, and they're always like, it's right there, it's so close. And they've been saying that for a decade, and it's just never quite there.
What is it? It's black, red, and
blue. My personal favorite color combination.
Dude, it's just destruction, damage, and denial. It's like it's destruction, damage, denial. It's 3D. I just created something sweet. Good for me. All right. Well, speaking of, paper games and the metas that are approaching, you also obviously you've cut your teeth very well in the digital field, be it Mythic Championships and the Runeterra Championships and their major event scene as well. There is very much a clear-cut difference, obviously, between playing a paper game and playing a digital, and it's not just the fact that you're staring at your opponent and possibly smelling them at the same time. It has to deal with. Oh, I have stories. It has to deal with. I have conceded a game because the smell was too bad. I promise.
No, you conceded?
Well, it was I was already like. I think I was 1-1. Like it didn't matter. It was like an.
Okay, so you're just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it was like it was a Magic event, like a draft. And I just could not deal with it because the person was just. I wish them well. I will say I wish them well, and I'm sure that right now they are doing well, and that's the best thing I will say about them.
That's so bad.
Oh man. Anyway, but yeah, there's got to be some advantages and disadvantages to playing paper versus digital. Some might say that the fact that Flesh and Blood doesn't have a digital platform readily accessible where you can just queue in, find an opponent, play a game, that's a disadvantage. But at the same time, there are some advantages to it as well from a competitive perspective when metas are not necessarily completely found out and solved within 48 hours, and there is room for people to create these little pockets of meta and develop their own. I want you to just kind of maybe elaborate a little bit about your thoughts about what the advantages and disadvantages are of digital versus in-person gameplay.
Well, the advantages, it's going to be mostly competitively focused because that's what I focus on. The advantages of digital is if there's something popping off, I will know within the hour. Like if there's a new list that's like doing incredibly well, I will know immediately, and I will know every single card in that list, and everyone can know that if they put in the time to like look through the data and stuff. And that's an advantage for like people who want to spend the time and stuff. I get to just immediately try something at any hour in the day. And I don't even have to hit up anybody else, right? If I want to try out this new strategy, I can just do that for 3 hours against a bunch of different people in different skill levels against different strategies. And that is so incredibly helpful. I'm trying to find a competitive advantage for paper. And the only thing I'm coming up with is the competitive advantage for paper card games is if you're not playing in paper. Like if you name the best 10 Flesh and Blood players in the world, I guarantee you they all play on Tabletop Simulator. Guarantee you. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're only playing paper, you are falling behind. You will not keep up unless you play 4 hours a day in paper. Like it's just not going to happen. That's another strength and I guess weakness of digital is the average skill level rises so much faster in digital play. If there's a strategy that's coming out that's really good in paper Flesh and Blood, it might take months for it to catch on. But in a digital game, it would take 2 days. And then people have already logged 50 games on it or whatever, right? 50, 100 games. And I think that over the course of the next year, you'll see these like digital grinders, the people who just sit there and play Tabletop Simulator, Matt folks, Dalen Mack. These people are going to take over the competitive scene. And it's not going to be close.
Yeah, I'm very much a firm believer that if you want to be really good at this game, and I mean like really good, because it seems like the water level is just constantly rising on the skill level of this game, and you need to stay afloat. And the way to stay afloat on top of this is literally to just jam as many games as possible, so that perhaps maybe you're not necessarily constantly plugged into every single testing group and every big brain play. Like you mentioned, like if you find out something or you catch wind of a brand new deck, you can just pick it up and play it right away. In the same vein, like I always tell people that the advantage of playing paper competitively is that if you're well supported and you have a good testing group of available friends and people to bounce ideas off of, you are already well ahead of the curve over people who perhaps don't have the same accessibility as you. So what you say in terms of might be a disadvantage of, well, I can't just jam games. If you do have that outlet, that to you is your own advantage. You're basically creating an advantage out of everyone else's universal disadvantage by sort of shoring up where everyone else might be lacking. If you have an outlet of 10 people who are really good players that on any given day, there's probably one or two of them who are available to jam a game or two to help you out or to bounce an idea off of to sort of theory craft with, that to me is one of those sort of sneaky advantages that may seem like a disadvantage versus digital. Networking, I feel, in this game is so much more important and so much more fruitful to your skill level and your competitive stance and your competitive stature that it's like you need that support base if you want to be a better player, and just plugging into a digital realm, you might have the list, but you might not have the rhetoric behind it. You might not have the theory behind it.
You might not know why. Yeah, why am I playing these cards?
Yes.
What do I do in this matchup? Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Are there any
100%.
transferable skills you would say that have sort of helped you out? Not maybe even from Legends of Runeterra or MTGA specifically, but just transferring the digital competitive nature over to something like Flesh and Blood. What are some of those transferable skills that you've taken from being a high level Runeterra player into Flesh and Blood?
The first one, and the one that I harp on the most, for anyone trying to get better, I do coaching and stuff, right? So like this I say more than probably anything else, is that playing games is not practicing. You practicing is practicing, right? Like if you're looking to play games, you should be learning. Like your entire focus should be on learning, and not really that game. I don't know if that makes sense, but like when I go into a game, and I'm on ladder or whatever for Runeterra, I'm up in Masters. A lot of times you're just trying to win the game to gain your LP, your points, right? I want to move higher on the ladder. That's not really how I play the game. I load into my game and I see a matchup that I'm not incredibly familiar with. Well, the first thing I do is make like a hypothesis, right? Okay, I think this matchup will progress like this, this, and this. I think my win condition is by doing this. And I think I lose the game if my opponent can do this. And so then I mulligan accordingly. Mulligan's not a thing in Flesh and Blood, but I mulligan accordingly. And I try to craft the game to go in the direction where I foresee me winning, right? Do I need to take the game late? Do I need to save these removal spells for these key things? That kind of stuff. How do I prevent my opponent's game plan? And I try to do that. And sometimes it doesn't work for X or Y reason. And then I revise my hypothesis, maybe tweak it a bit. And then I try it again, right? And then I'm almost excited to queue into that matchup again, so I could try to learn it more. I can try to do this next thing. Now I know that mulliganing this card is a mistake because I really need it at this point in the game, where I didn't know that before. And if I'd have just like played the game to win, I'd have just gone, oh damn, unlucky, and then tried again the next time. And I would get better, sure, but like not fast. And so I definitely took that to Flesh and Blood, where if you saw my first couple games against some of the people that I met in the community, I was asking questions every turn. I would walk through my line and I would say, okay, I would say, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this, 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 and this. How do you on the other side of the table feel about that? And they'd go, oh, well, this is kind of a pain because I would really like to set up this. And I'd go, okay, so maybe this attack then this, and I block like this instead, would put more pressure on your plan. And they'd go, yeah, no, that's way more annoying for me. And I'd go, okay, good. And then you file that away. And every turn, I'm not trying to play the best, I'm trying to learn. And that I think is the most important skill that I've taken with me, is that like learning mindset.
It's a very poignant lesson. And I always tell people that, I mean, I say it at the end of my podcast, obviously, you're not losing if you're learning. And in reality, if like you mentioned, there's a difference between playing and practicing. And I'm glad that you brought that up because it's incredibly important. And a lot of new players assume that just jamming games and mindlessly, like having YouTube on the side while you're just going through the motions is not really doing you justice. And what you really hammered home, which is incredibly important for players to understand if they want to improve, is that there's multiple avenues to victory and multiple avenues. Like, it's not just about your own win condition; it's about your opponents. And if it's something that you don't know, like you mentioned, hypothesizing what their game plan is and allocating your resources to best either support your win condition or disrupting theirs. Like, that's also a decision that you have to make, and that's part of it. And what's also important is like you mentioned, being able to talk out and having a practice partner that you're willing to just be like, okay, here's the cards I have. Like, there's nothing wrong with that in a practice session of just putting out your entire hand and saying, these are my 4 cards. Here's how I want to do it. And the better player will then sort of critique it or talk about various different lines of play. That's how I learned. That's how I got better.
It's the best way.
It is the best way. And asking questions, again, it's not just about what card is the best to play, but why is it the best card to play? And that's what really pushed me over the top in terms of being not just a decent player, but being a pretty good player at the game, is because I asked those questions and you understand the logic behind it. And that was immensely, immensely helpful. And I'm glad that you drove that point home, because it's so vital to new players who want to get better, who think that it's just a matter of repetition. It's not just a matter of repetition. It's a matter of repetition and understanding as to the new situations. And what you mentioned about filing away these little interactions is so clutch, because even though it might only show up once every 20 games, that little edge you'll have when it does show up is so important. And this
big, and you can apply what you learned to other things, right? Like, eventually you start to paint the broader picture in your mind, how the matchup goes or whatever, or how a game of Flesh and Blood goes, or Runeterra or Magic or whatever, right? And you start applying these things to multiple situations, even if it's not the same situation, right? And that's what I was talking about earlier with the Arsenal Pass thing, where I'm grabbing these like tidbits of throwaway sentences and kind of like building in my mind how a game of Flesh and Blood goes where I win. And that I think is like what I really take away is just the broad strokes. That's what I'm very good at, is like the macro, and then I can apply it in a micro level, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense, and it's important too. I know that when I'm streaming like Gwent, let's say, and I'm getting backseated to all hell, and people are like, why are you doing this? And I have to explain to them, I'm like, my plan A is dust. It's garbage. It's not going to happen, so don't even worry about it. My only line of victory is if I take this unorthodox path and everything lines up, because it's a 5% shot at success, but that 5% is better than the 0% of sticking to my own game plan. And having that knowledge, you'll lose, obviously, 95% of the time, but that 1 in 20 where it does pay off feels good, because you've taken a losing scenario into a good one, because you understand the concepts and you understand a little bit of the theory behind what's going on. And I think that that's a very good point to make. And
everyone can win games in your head, right? When the plan works, everyone can win those. It's winning the ones where it doesn't that really shows who's like a good player.
Well, my man, you've been a well of insight and wisdom, and I do appreciate it. There's one more segment that we've got around the corner. It's called Go Again. Mr. Caleb Van Patten, a.k.a. MajiinBae. I know that saying your whole name makes you a little bit
weird.
Just reading your passport as you go through customs. Will you join us for Go Again?
Yeah, of course. Let's
awesome stuff. All right, we'll be right back with Go Again right after this product review from BCW Supplies. Instant Speed is brought to you by BCW Supplies. You can go check out BCW Supplies at bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10, get 10% off of your order. First order, second order, 963rd order, if you should be so bold. But I want to talk to you about a little bit of a contest that we're about to run here, because when 983 Media's YouTube channel reaches 1,000 subscribers, we are going to give away the Ultimate BCW Bundle. And I'm going to tell you what you get with it. And we've done reviews on all of these products, and so if you want to go to past episodes and see exactly what you're getting, here's what you're getting. You're getting the Prime X4 XL awesome super gaming box with all the amazing, really cool storage spaces. This is the big boy. What else are you getting? Well, we're going to give you my favorite deck box, which is the Deck Vault 100. which allows you to have space for your dice. It's a nice leatherette type case. Fits 100 sleeved cards as well. We also got you the Prism, the brand new Spectrum Series Prism deck box as well. That's in the giveaway. What else do I have in here? Oh, how about the Elite 2-sleeve and inner sleeve and deck box combo pack? Sleeves inside the sleeves, inside the deck box. That's part of the party pack. And finally, I'm going to hook you up with some of these Elite 2 deck sleeves. These are pretty damn awesome. I use these for all my decks. I've got a bunch of them. We've got teal, purple. This is like a slate gray kind of color, but those are part of it as well. And hey, I might even throw in a pack of cards just because, hey, why not? Maybe there's a Fabled in there. Why not? Check out bcwsupplies.com. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Order now, order often, make it happen. All right, it's time to go again on a series of questions to Mr. Caleb Van Patten, aka MajiinBae, as we go again on a series of rapid fires here. As you know what, you could elaborate as much as you want to know, and just in between segments, you're talking about like, how much time do I have? Take all the time in the world, my man, because these are some hard-hitting questions. Are you ready to go again?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, number one is, what is MajiinBae's hidden talent?
I am a very, very good lacrosse player.
Lacrosse?
Lacrosse.
The national sport of Canada. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did actually. I did know that. I played with a lot of Canadians.
A lot of people
They're
think it's
very good.
a lot of people think it's hockey, but it's actually lacrosse.
Actually, lacrosse. Yeah, that surprised me. It did surprise me when I first learned it.
Next question: is champion level CCG talent a teachable skill?
Yes, but
I was waiting for it. Yeah, but
yes, but it is the same thing with anything. Some innate level of talent will help you on your way, right? The person who doesn't have a mind for strategy games to start with has a much higher mountain to climb than someone who already thinks that way and just has to apply it to a card game.
All right, this one has puzzled a lot of people. One Tariq Patel even quoted, "Who the hell are these people with the weird anime avatars? What the heck is your Discord avatar, your profile pic?"
So my name's MajiinBae, right? Like Majin Buu from Dragon Ball Z. So my Discord picture is Majin Buu holding 3 Runeterra cards, and on the backs it spells out Bae, B-A-E. Yeah. A viewer made that for me, and I made it my profile picture on like everything. I thought it was the coolest thing.
Some of the most fascinating DMs I get are people with like whose profile picture are just like gigantic anime titties, and I'm like, all right, let's accept this this DM. Let's see what's going on over here. Yeah, like, all right, let's this could be anything. Yeah, so I could honestly say that before we ever met, I saw you enter the chat, and I was like, okay, no clue who this guy is, and let's find out. And then I met you, and I'm like, this guy's the freaking coolest guy ever. So,
it's funny because I played Tarek in one of the events at Indianapolis, and we've talked like quite a bit, right? But only through Discord. And so I sat down and I played the entire match with him, and I was talking to him, being all like friendly and stuff, you know, mentioning like all these things. I'm very talkative when I play in paper. And then he gets up and he goes and tells the story about how he lost to this Viserai player to other people in the group. And they're like, do you know who that is? And I think that's when he said, I don't know who these people with the anime avatars are.
Yeah. That is the famous Tariq Patel quote of who these anime avatar people are. I'm much like you. I'm so talkative. Unless they're not into it, then I shut up and whatever. But I'm very much a talkative player, and I think that to be as part of my competitive advantage is that sometimes they'll buy into it, and I'm not trying to purposely distract them because I just like having a fun discourse with somebody while I'm playing. It's all for fun. It's a card game, whatever. Obviously, we're here to compete. But sometimes I'm playing and you can see that they're just having a good time, and I'm like, this is my edge. Now you're in my game, baby. So,
yeah, I can ramble forever and not lose any points, but you might not be able to.
You and I might be the only 2 players to play Redline Briar or Kato or something along those lines and go to time because we would just be shooting the breeze.
Be talking the whole time.
Constantly. Yep. Next question is, what is the origin of the famous Blevins MajiinBae meme? And I'm gonna add this one to the screen, so if you're on YouTube right now, you'll see it. But this bad boy has made its rounds, and I want you to kind of explain the origin of what this is.
Yeah, that made the rounds is correct. It would definitely made the rounds in the Runeterra community. So basically, I needed a place to stay for the last night at Indianapolis, and I crashed. I crashed with you guys, and Blevins was on the bed, and it was a big bed, and he's like, "Yo, we could split this bed," and I was like, "Oh, word." So like, I get in the bed, and I'm like just on my phone reading a book or playing a game or whatever, and Blevins is already like asleep.
Yeah.
Or trying to sleep, and I like peek my head up, and I realize that on the wall is just a mirror for some reason. Like it's just it's the weirdest placed mirror.
Yeah, we got
And
the honeymoon suite. That's why.
Yeah, yeah. So you can watch, but it was a very thin mirror, so it only like showed like your head level. I don't understand the purpose of it, but I thought it was so funny to just see my head slowly peek over Blevin's sleeping floor. And so I was like, hold on, don't move. And I took my phone out, like cheesing at the camera, took a picture, posted it in like, I don't know, the Discord or something, thought it was kind of funny. And people were like, you have to put that on Twitter. So I put it on Twitter. And it got more attention than I had expected.
Oh, it's definitely worthwhile. Between that and the fact that the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile was parked outside our hotel for like 2 nights, like I don't know what was more amazing about that entire weekend. Frankly, it was awesome. Yeah, there was 4 of us crammed into a hotel room, which is fine. Like it was awesome. It was great.
Classic card gaming stuff.
Oh yeah, dude. There were card wrappers all over the place. Freaking what's his name? Bolus was on the floor sawing logs like a night, like
snoring like it's nobody's business.
Oh my god, he was just trying to like. He was the best part about that as well was the fact that he spent that last night drinking and talking about the viability of Flexi Lexi, which was
good old Flexi Lexi.
Yeah, it could be both. It could be control. It could be aggro. It could do everything. It's like, all right, you're drunk. We're going home. Like
you had one too many. We're cutting you off.
Talking to the bartender about it. Trust me, you don't get it.
It's so flexible.
It's in her name. The best tip that you can give for a Legends of Runeterra player who wants to try Flesh and Blood.
Just get the blitz decks and do it. Like that's if I was trying to like get into the game again, the blitz decks are like such a good spot to do it. But if you're in Legends of Runeterra, and you're watching this because you follow me, then in my Discord there's a Flesh and Blood section where people are always talking about Flesh and Blood and playing games of Flesh and Blood. If you just type in there and say, hey, I'm looking for people to try out Flesh and Blood, they'll walk you through how to get it on Tabletop Simulator. You can try out all the decks. They'll walk you through how to play. Yeah, that's a great place to start.
No, it makes sense. And I mean, it's funny. We were like, just do it. Just go for it.
Do it. Just join a tournament, whatever.
I know. There's the MajiinBae school of thought, which is like, who cares? Let's go. You know, just running in Leroy Jenkins style, which I love. All right, this one is submitted by one Brian Basoko, from the secret Discord that doesn't exist. And
it doesn't exist. Yeah, there is no Discord.
There's no Discord. He asks, as a content creator, what do you think is missing in the content creation space for Flesh and Blood?
Good gameplay. Oh my god. Like it's really hard to get good gameplay content for a paper only game. And good gameplay doesn't just mean like good games. It means like well recorded games where you can clearly see what's going on. Good audio. I think the best channel is I think they're like Fabrica.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're Ukrainian.
Yes.
They do a phenomenal job. Like easily the best produced Flesh and Blood content around.
Besides this show.
Yeah. No, this is in a tier of its own.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. We're an ISP tier. You can't spell S tier without ISP.
Without ISP. Oh, speaking of.
Get out of town.
Got a little something.
Oh, look at you. For the benefit of
you can't quite see it, but this is the Instant Speed Podcast t-shirt.
I love it. Wow. See?
Gotta rep the boy.
You gotta rep the boy. I appreciate it, my friend. And I assume that you're gonna be wearing that at the Pro Tour, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
When I win. I'm gonna be holding my hero in one hand and showing the shirt in the other. Yeah, of course.
You're a beaut. You're an absolute beaut. I tend to agree. I mean, we've done here on 93 Media, we've done a couple shows and whatever, and like it's tough though. It's absolutely
hard. I don't do it for a reason. Like it's tough.
It's very difficult to like. The problem is like recording games. There's going to be glare off the cards, the camera, the overhead, this miking up players. There's a lot going on, and the fact that Fabrica does a really good job of it, like somebody's got to, and I'm glad that it's them. But yeah, it's a very difficult medium to record.
Also, even me, like who I would consider myself a pretty competitive player, I don't have a lot of time to put into Flesh and Blood though, so I don't know. This comes up a lot. I don't know what most of the cards do, and so when someone just says, "Oh, I do this," oh, okay, and then they just kind of like do things, I don't know what's happening. I can kind of figure it out, but I don't want to have to figure it out. Fabrica puts the cards up on the screen, which requires, I'm a content creator. I make gameplay footage. I understand how annoying that is,
oh
right?
My God.
That's
tedious.
So much work. So much work. But it is tremendous. It's so nice just to be like, oh, what's that? Oh, it's this. Awesome.
Yeah. They
Thanks,
do good
guys.
work. Yeah.
They
Thanks.
put like the right color of the card and everything. It's fantastic.
Those bastards. They make us look bad. But you're right. It's incredibly tedious. So more power to them. Here's one that I always wrestle with. Are there more toilets in the world or people?
I mean, what do you consider a toilet?
I mean, I will say a toilet is something that can flush.
People. It's got to be people, right?
Well, look, and I don't know why I'm on an island on this. I thought that this would be a little bit more of a debate. I think it's toilets and I'll tell you why. Because, all right, let's just say that for the sake of argument, there's 8 billion people in the world, right? All right. Now, not everyone is going to have a toilet, and not everyone in their living quarters is going to have a toilet per person. That's obvious. That's going to happen. However, if you just look out, if I'm looking outside my window, I see a bunch of like shops, supermarkets, hotels, government. Yeah. They all have multiple but no one's living there, so someone's got to be accounting for that. I am of the firm belief that with all the various buildings and hotels and other establishments in the world, stadiums that have like hundreds of them, that they're covering the bases of those who do not have the luxury of their own toilet. But
it could be.
Listen, I wish someone out there would do the math on this, but I'm prepared to die on the hill that there are more toilets in the world than people.
I think our perception of the question might be tainted from where we live.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I guess that's definitely gonna influence it. But I'm kind of accounting for the fact of those who are not privileged enough to have access to a flushable toilet. I think that there's enough over luxury within certain areas of the world that might overtake. Look, it was this question or more doors than wheels in the world. More doors or wheels.
Wow.
Yeah, that would have been the other one. So
That's actually really tough.
Yeah, I gave you this one instead. I figured that this
I like that we have different I like that we didn't just immediately agree either.
This is a debate show, a high-level debate show.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's a good question. I'm just going to stick with people. But I think you've convinced me to where I now think it is closer than I had originally thought.
Perfect. As long as I can, change one mind, then I think I've done my due diligence here. All right. Last one, favorite one. We're going to set the scene. Top 8 invitational, or it's the 8-man invitational. The best personalities in Flesh and Blood are flown out to a stadium. There's like 30,000 people in the crowd. It's the finals. The stadium is ready. The lights are low. The pyro goes off. MajiinBae gets announced. What music are you walking out to for that final?
It's really tough. That's really tough. Once upon a time, I had an amateur boxing match, and I walked out to that song "Sail." You know that song? I can't remember who's it by, but it's the chorus. They literally just go "Sail," and it was like incredibly popular at the time. I didn't get to pick it. There was like 3 options, and my opponent picked it, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. And I walked out, and I got bodied. So let's not do that song. That one was immediately crossed off the list.
0-1. All right.
0-1, baby.
Hey,
yeah,
still good for day 2. That's still good for day 2. Your X1.
I gotta think like X. Yeah, X. I can run it back. I gotta think of like my favorite songs of all time. I don't know. I might pick something a little like I like sad boy music. I like music where like the lyrics are really depressing. I might go with Mr. Brightside. I love that song.
Okay.
A weird walkout song, but I just love. Every time it comes on, it makes me happy. So that one.
So there's no like Mad World or something like, that you're coming in moping and stuff like that.
No.
And you show up, you're already bruised and beaten up, and it's like, what the hell? Like, this is barely a match. Yeah.
It's a card game.
Yeah. I kicked my own ass. It's like, okay. All right, no
to
problem.
get in the mindset. No, the problem is I listen to sad boy music, but like you've met me, you see me now. This is like my natural. Like,
I know.
I would be singing along to this guy talking about how like he's super sad about this girl with this stupid like cheesy grin on my face.
Yeah, I just like picture you with your headphones on, smiling, bopping your head. What do you listen to? My Chemical Romance. It's like, oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
All right, we're in. No problem. Meanwhile, I'm in the corner
Exactly.
crying, listening to Backstreet Boys. It's like,
I could also do I Write Sins, Not Tragedies. That's just a banger. That's just always good.
now is that Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco?
Panic at the Disco.
I know they're one and the same.
Very
Although,
similar.
what's the lead singer of Panic at the Disco's name? Oh, I forgot.
Oh, man.
I forgot,
Oh.
but I think he's
Brennan Urie. I
yes,
think.
he is
Yeah.
so flipping talented.
Incredibly talented.
I'm not a big fan of Panic at the Disco, but himself, I've watched and listened to a lot of his stuff, and I thought that he's pretty
It's
damn
ridiculous.
awesome.
Yeah, there's only so many people that I've listened to and just gone like, holy shit, just from like their voice, right? And yeah, he's one of them.
All right, well, there you have it, friends. Sad music only for the smiliest and happiest guy that I've ever met. There he is. Yeah, thumbs up, ladies and gentlemen. My man, honestly, it has been a genuine pleasure. I know that this was a little bit unscripted in terms of hitting you really last minute last night to pick up our buddy Doa, but you really did come through, and I do appreciate you doing the show, my friend.
Of course, I was hoping to have a couple more accomplishments under my belt before I came in. I think I said something about that on like Twitter to your post. I was like, I want to win more stuff so I can come on the show.
You did. You have. This was, I think, maybe like a few weeks ago. It's like, I guess I have to win more tournaments to be on ISP, and here you are. All it took was like this really awful virus to come on and just sweep Doa away, and here you are reaping the benefits. But honestly, it has been a sincere pleasure. Your career is not just budding in certain elements. It's already in blossom, and it's great to see you succeed, my friend. If anybody wants more MajiinBae across all your platforms, drop it on us.
MajiinBae on YouTube and MajiinBae LOR on Twitch and Twitter. That's where to find me.
Yeah, go check him out. Honestly, like I said, likely the most likable guy in card games that I've ever met in my entire life.
I don't know about that, but I really appreciate it.
I mean, it's definitely, you're definitely in the top 5. You're approaching living legend status for that in that regard.
Already, damn.
But yeah, cheers to you, and thank you everybody for listening. And don't forget, big time ups to all of our Patreon members. You're going to see them at the end of the show here, as we're going to drop a little bit of love on them. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/instantspeedpod. There's all kinds of tiers, and we don't hide any content behind any paywall, so you'll get everything you need, but it's a good way to sort of give us a pat on the back. And don't forget, friends, you're not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the game. You might win. We'll catch you next week on the Instant Speed Podcast.